It's a Gundam!
Super Draco, and we're back for part 2 of It's a GunPla Master Grade Virtue. And welcome back to It's a GunPla, the show where I build GunPla. Still sounds redundant, not changing it. So, we did the torso and the GN drive, so now we're going to move on to the head and start the arms. So anyway, you know, as I was looking things up, I found out there's a variant of the Gundam Virtue where it focuses on physical weapons. And I saw that and my mouth watered, because Virtue has these giant legs that are GN condensers to store GN particles for his energy heavy weapons. But because the GN or the Virtue physical uses solid weapons and not beam weapons, except for one, the condensers in the legs are giant missile launchers. I want that like crazy. So anyhow, so what we got going on here is we're building the head. So we have this clear green piece for the eyes. So for those that love to paint, you know, there's some really cool effects you can do to help that using that clear. I'm just using the sticker because, in all honesty, for my anime style ones, I generally use the sticker just because even in poor lighting, the sticker reflects light better than the clear ones. Because I used to like do all this fancy painting and stuff, and in all honesty, for all the effort, it was just not returning. Like I said, there's ways of making it look like it glows, but since I'm going for the anime look on this one, that's why I'm just going to use the sticker. And now, putting the faceplate on, there's some really good detail on the faceplate, but obviously because it's just a sea of white, the detail isn't showing. So I've got my lining pen, and let's do a little bit of lining. Now my lining is very dark. Now, generally, you should use a Q-tip, a cotton swab, or whatever, or cotton bud, whatever they call it in where you live. But me, I'm just going to wipe the excess paint off with my finger because since I don't have tiny raccoon-like fingers, that my finger just glides right over the gap and takes the excess paint off. But in doing so, those just a small number of black lines really makes a difference. Now, because Nadley's supposed to look naked, I'm not going crazy doing lining. Now I'm going to retouch the lines a bit that didn't darken as much as I like, but now the whole face stands out. And we can move on. And I was previously talking about reasons why I didn't like the anime, that I didn't think it was as good as some people say. I had a thought, because somebody, when I was talking to my friend about it, he pointed out how the pilot of the Virtue and Nadley, he was the only one who really underwent significant changes in character growth. Because he basically did the main character Setsuna's story arc for him. Because Tiaria, he started, I think he was a he, it's hard to tell with the Innovades. They're very androgynous. But either way, I'll go with he because I believe that's the pronoun the show assigned you. So he started as a very cold, unfeeling, and robotic type character. And throughout the first season, he was repeatedly, he's trying to do teamwork and stuff. And eventually, and then when they're cut off from Veda, the computer system. Now, pausing that thought, I'm noticing the eyes aren't lining up quite the way I want them to. So I'm going to disassemble and fix that. One thing, that's one thing you can always, as long as it's not meant to seal together, you can always go back. And now that we have the face on there, we can gauge where the center should be a little better. Much better. Anyway, so continuing my thoughts. So then going into Season 2 of Gundam 00, Tiaria had made not a drastic change. He was personable. He was interacting with people like people. And basically, despite not being a main character, he did underwent a story arc for the humanization of someone who doesn't feel human. Anyway, I also found a picture of the Tiaria in drag, and I'm like, wait a minute. If you're going to put him in drag and send him undercover to a party, why did you give him an enormous fake rack? But then again, Gundam 00, the female character designs in that show were all over the place. Because the first season was just a parade of women with enormous, unrealistic breasts. And then in Season 2, one of them got a jacket that suddenly just erased most of her breast tissue and somehow made it seem more normal. Because I distinctly remember, I can't remember her name, but she was a supporter celestial being, and they would frequently show her by the pool for no reason other than just simple titillation of the audience because of her giant unrealistic chest. And it's like, when I talk to some of the people who love Gundam 00, it's like they don't remember any of this stuff. They only remember the positives. The fluid animation, the mech designs, when the plot actually was good. Because that was another problem I had with the show, is they had characters who are utterly pointless. Because I've said it in another video, but when you're doing something, if you can write something, a TV show, a movie, a book, anything, if you can take a character and basically, if you take this character out and it basically changes nothing about the plot, they were not important. And in this case, that was for the entire Season 1, that was this character, I can't remember her name. Well, I've got my computer here. So let's look it up. Wang Mei, her steward Hong Wong. In Season 1, you could literally erase Wang Li Mei and Hong Wong from the entire season, and it makes no difference. They actually are more prominent in Season 2, at least in relation to the plot. But you could actually erase them from Season 2, and the only thing that would change is who rescued Nana Trinity and gave her that mobile armor that contained her throne Gundam. Anyway, I'm trying not to rant. Well, actually, maybe ranting's good. Some of my videos where I just ramble and rant seem to do better. So, I will continue. Speaking of, there's one other thing that I think really sets up the Gundam 00 where they fail, and that's because the 4 main villains of the first season were more interesting than all of your protagonists, all of the supporting characters, everything. Because when it comes down to it, Graham Aker, Patrick Colasauer, Ali Alsatius, and Soma Paris were just infinitely more interesting than all the main characters. And I think that is a hallmark of bad writing. But, you know, like I said, I'm in a minority in that thought. But I will continue to say it. This is Gundam 00 is a reductive version of Gundam Wing with better animation. Now, one thing, the hair on Nadley on the back of its head there, it's going to fall out repeatedly. On the original high grade 1-100, that gray piece would actually hold the hair on. Now, the hair was much more stiff and rigid and inflexible, but the gray piece holding it on meant it didn't fall off like this, because it uses a little bar that just clips in there. And short of just gluing it, really, that hair is not going to stay in. Of course, you know, me being me, when you're designing this thing, it's like, why do you need these long cables to interface Virtue's armor with the Nadley? Because couldn't you have run these cables under Nadley's armor so they weren't just hanging in the most obtrusive place possible? Because, I mean, let's be honest, while this thing's moving, these wires risk getting tangled on themselves and other stuff. Enemies, in theory, could grab them, and if they get close enough. And, you know, I also could see them making a wind system to wind them up inside of the Gundam. But furthermore, it's like, why do you need these big cables? Couldn't you have just built the cables inside the pieces and just had connectors that go right into the armor? And there's the hair falling off again. And yeah, I'm kind of being hypercritical of this, but for being the iconic portion of this suit's design, I just think it's a waste. And so, since we've got some time left, we're going to move on and start building the arms. And by the end of this video, we'll have at least completed the right arm. So getting the arms, these are very bland by Gundam 00 standards. In fact, they're extremely similar to Dynamis and Axia. and maybe Curios. But looking at my Curios, I'm not sure about that. Nah, Curioses are a lot different than the others. Get back at my desk. Don't mind my sniffling, that's just an allergy problem. It's ongoing, and it sometimes, even with the meds, it still hits every now and then. So, I've complained a lot about Gundam 00, but I should probably talk about things I like about Gundam 00, because I said it before, and the villain stories are by far the most compelling portion of it. In particular, Graham Acre, his descent into obsessive madness is probably one of the highlights of the show. And I've given tons of spoilers, but in one of the sequel mangas, Graham Acre actually is piloting a rebuilt, refitted Gundam Exia. So, taking his story full circle, or taking his story to the end, he's now the Gundam pilot of the main Gundam that he'd obsessed over, and there's just some kind of fitting irony to it. But the villains also represent at least thematically in my opinion, they represent because in 00 as a show, Celestial Being's goal is to unite the world and end all conflicts somehow. And that somehow is by terror attacks. Which on the one hand, I actually see it working. They have super advanced technology that no country by itself can deal with. But then, so they unite to develop new technology. That actually makes sense to me. But it's just I take issue with this whole idea that, oh hey, by doing X, Y, and Z, that somehow that's going to make, by killing all these people, destroying all this stuff, that somehow everything's going to work out in their favor, which ignores all the collateral damage, all the people who are going to be affected by their actions in ways they can't predict. Which, in my opinion, was the whole point of Louise Halevy as a character. Because her entire family was killed in an attack by the Throne Gundams, although it wasn't part of an operation, but that's irrelevant. It was still a Gundam attack that killed her whole family, cost her one of her hands, and pushed her to join the bad guys, because they not only used magic GN particles to regrow her hand, but then gave her a prominent job in the military to hunt them down and get her revenge. And I remember I want to say it's the final battle between the Exia and the GN flag in Season 1, Graham Acre going on about a mix of insane ramblings about being in love with the Gundam Exia and its pilot, and sets in responding by talking about how he's insane and twisted, and Graham Acre responding, "You're the one that made me twisted." And it's one of the moments where, this would be in a better narrative. This would be where the main character has a moment where a dramatic moment where he's got to either change. He's either got to change himself, his view of the world will change, or of his own actions. And that change itself would push his part of the narrative forward. But we didn't get that. Instead, he just tripled down. I am the Gundam. I'm right. And now I'm back to complaining. So then, moving on to one of the other villains, Patrick Colasauer. I don't have a whole lot to say, because Patrick's story actually is interesting, because he started as kind of your goofball. He's supposed to be good, but the Gundam's advanced technology and pilots make him look like a joke. And then as it pushed, you started seeing his good points. And eventually when the Gundams are cut off for Veda and it's a pure battle of skill, suddenly Patrick wasn't just a joke after all. It was just the Gundam pilots had a technologic advantage. So, and now, I gotta look it up and see if he survived or not, because I do not remember if he died in Season 1. Oh, he made it all to the... Let's see. I'm talking about Patrick, and ironically, he was the one who finished off Nadley at the end of Season 1. But now the more I learn, it makes me appreciate Patrick as a character. But again, even a comic relief character had better characterization than the main character, excluding Tierra. Anyhow, we're finishing this up. So I'm tempted to change this video to 00 slander. But anyhow, so we're going to put that wrist in and put his arm together. And thanks for watching. See you in the next video. And check me out on fanfiction. My fantasy story currently has 3 chapters and a prologue.